Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Previously, you learned how to implement class-based views within a Django REST Framework project. Today, we'll take our skills to the next level. In this video, you're going to learn about view sets and routers. So let's get started. Let's first learn about view sets. So basically, to make it simple, view sets allow you to combine all of your logic for every related view within a single class. For example, let's say I'm building a note-taking app. So here I would have two views, or I would have two endpoints ideally. So for example, user and note. So normally to handle the user's endpoint or the user view, you would have to implement more than one user class. Or if you're using mixins, you would have to implement multiple mixins. So for example, you would have to implement a separate mixin to update a user or a separate mixin to create a new user. So what Viewset allows you to do is it allows you to combine all of the logic for user-related views within a single class. Let's now learn how to refactor our code base to use Viewset. Let's get started. Within my project, I'll create a new file and then let's call it viewsets.py. Let's create a viewset first. So I'll give it a class and then I'll call it item viewset. It has to inherit from the viewsets module. So viewsets dot and then read only model viewset. So you may ask, what's a read only model viewset? What functions does it do? So the read only model viewset, it only provides functions. As the name suggests, it only provides functions to perform read operations. So this means to list or retrieve items from a database. And then with the colon, I have to now define a configuration. So I have a lookup field, which I'll call ID. If you're very curious about what lookup field does, I would suggest that you look into my previous video. I'll link it in the description. Then I have to define a query set. So query set, and then my items model, and then a serializer class. So my serializer, item serializer. So if you're confused about what it is, again, I suggest you to look at my previous videos. Now I need to fix my imports. So from REST Framework, I import viewsets. From .models, I import my item. And then I import my item serializer. Now, of course, we're not done yet. Now I need to link this class with my urls.py file. So to make this happen, first I will create a variable. I'll call it item list and then item viewset as view get list. So maybe you're wondering, what does it mean? So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a view from my class, and every time the user does a get request on this class, I want to list items from my database. So now let's go back to urls.py. Here I'll create a path. So let's call it viewsets /items, comma, and then I have viewsets dot and then my variable name. So in this case, it's item list. Next, I now need to define a name for this. So let's call it name item list. I need to fix my imports. So I scroll up and then from dot I import viewsets. Let's now test this out to see if everything works. So first I have to navigate to Django tutorial project and then Python manage.py run server. Now that the server has been run, let's go to our API client. Now that I'm in my API client, I can simply perform a get request to viewsets and then /item. Let's send, and as you can see, it's still working fine. Let's now write some code to retrieve items from a database. So within viewsets.py, again, this is very simple. So I call it item detail, okay, and then item viewset as view. So if they perform a get request to this class, I want to retrieve. Now this is where you might get confused. Here within this code, I'm saying that if they do a get request, they should retrieve, and at the same time, if they do a get request, they should list. I'll now write more code so that this confusion can go away. So I save my code, I go back to urls.py and then path viewsets items int ID. So basically this is a dynamic URL or a dynamic endpoint where I have an ID parameter, and then instead of getting the item list variable, I get the item detail variable. That's it. That wasn't so hard, wasn't it? Let's now test this out once again. So within my API client, for example, if I do an ID of 5, it works. If I do an ID of 4, it still works. Let's now write some additional code to update or perform writing operations to the database. So within my viewsets.py file, here I do a handler for a post request, and then I tell item viewset that every time the user posts to this endpoint, I want to create a new item to the database. So create. Let's now test this out once again. So within my API client, items / and then I do a post. Let's give it a name. So this time I'll just do Fedora Linux. Here we're getting an error. and I know why. If we go back within our item view set, remember that we are inheriting from the read-only model view set. So this only performs read operations. I want to perform write operations as well. This is very simple. So I do viewsets dot and then the model view set. That's it. If you're wondering what model view set is, as the documentation suggests, it's a view set that provides creating, retrieving, updating, and other requests for the database. It should work now. Let's go back to our API client and then test it out. So within my API client, if I perform a post request to the same URL and I perform the name, then I do a send. As you can see, it worked just fine. Then I'll do a get request to see if all of my items are getting updated, right? As you can see, our code works. Let's now handle put and delete requests. Within viewsets.py, recall that we have an item detail variable. If we go back to urls.py, notice that this variable is being used for dynamic endpoints. So this is here, we'll put our put and delete handlers. So put, and then it should be updating, and then I want to delete requests as well. And if the user performs a delete request, I want to destroy items from the database. Let's now test it out once again. So within my API client, I do a put request on an item ID of 6, and let's call it arch. Now let's do a get and let's see if it's arch. Now let's try deleting it. Send. So no content. If I do a get, I should get a 404. Nice. Let's now learn about custom actions. So custom actions can be used for certain functions, for certain endpoints. You'll know what I mean in a second. So let's now create a custom action. To create an action, I would have to use the action decorator. So the action decorator has a few arguments. One of them is the detail argument, which accepts a Boolean value. So if it's false, it means that this decorator or this custom action is good for endpoints that are not dynamic. In other words, this is good for viewsets/items, but it's not really geared towards viewsets/items/ID. Okay. So let's now move on. Then I would need to define my method. So let's call method get. So let's now create a custom action. So I call mine def, and then let's say hi. So self request, and then I just return a response. Of course, now I need to fix my import. So I scroll up. So from REST framework decorators, I import action, and then from REST framework response, I import response. Now I would need to create another variable to use this action. So here I would simply go item custom action, and then item view set as view. So now I need to handle the method. So for the get method or the get request, I want to execute the say hi action. Let's now go back to urls.py to link this function. So I create another path, and then view sets items say hi, and then I import my item custom action variable. Let's now see if everything works. So here within my API client, if I do view sets/items and then say hi, it should work. Nice. So of course, if you want to use another action that can be run on a dynamic endpoint, so action, and then this time my detail should be true, and let's give it a post method this time. So def say hi ID, and then by default the ID should be none. So here my idea is that I should get an item from the ID, so item.objects.get with that ID. This time it should be pk, and then I will have my serializer, of course. So item serializer with the item.data, so the serialized data from this item. Next, I would want to check if my serializer is a JSON object. So if is instance serializer dict, and then I return a response where I just get the name from that item. Now I would need to use this function, so I scroll back down, and then this time if it's a post, so I do a say hi of ID. But of course, since this is detail true, I can't use it. So let's remove this and put it in another variable. So item custom action ID, item view set as view, and then post. Let's now go back up to urls.py, and then I'll create another endpoint for this. So path view sets item ID say hi ID. This endpoint will run this custom function. So within my API client, this time I get to use an ID. So this time I'll say, for example, /say hi ID. This time it was a post request sent. If I do 5, okay, so I am getting my name property. Let's now learn about routers. So what are routers? So a router is a class that automatically generates URL patterns for our view set. In other words, notice that we had to implement a lot of code, or basically around 11 lines, to handle all of our views. This is where router comes in. Basically, it lets you remove a lot of this boilerplate, as I would call it, and it helps you to simplify a lot of your code. So let's use a router. So within urls.py, I create a router by saying router is default router. Now I need to import it. So I scroll back up from REST framework routers, I import default router. And then I would need to register my router. So router.register. So it should be a regex expression. So R apostrophe viewset. Let's just call it viewsets, comma viewsets dot, and then my class. So item viewset. And then it should have a base name. And then next I would have to redefine my URLs pattern variable. So it should be path and empty string include router.urls. Now I need to import my include function. So I go back up here. I just do include. So basically all of this code is more or less useless for me. Let's go back for API client and then test it out. So this time we redefined our endpoints to just be viewset, and if I do a get request on viewsets, okay, and let's say if I do a post and then create another entry, let's call it bsd send. Okay, so far so good. What if I do a retrieve get? Okay, so far everything's working fine. Let's now test out our custom actions that we created earlier. So /9 and then say hi item custom action that we defined. So I do a post. Okay, it was the wrong endpoint. So I say hi ID with the post request and then I send. I have to add a slash. Okay, and if I do a get this time to my say hi endpoint, cool. So everything's working fine. So notice with the help of default routers, we got to shave off so many lines of code. So in this video, you got to learn how to implement Viewset, what Viewsets are and their advantages. Along with that, you also got to learn about routers and also their advantages. That's it for today's video. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Till then, bye bye.